a lot of libertarians will understand why I believe that all rights are actually property rights, not just your real property and your personal property, but your freedom of speech, your right to assemble, even gay marriage, all of that stuff, that's all, in my opinion, a property rights issue. And I'll get into more nitty-gritty, like even certain things like abortion and immigration. I have property rights analyses for all of that. But I just want to give you guys a little framework, especially because, and I don't think I told Edgar this, but I was called like a bad Catholic online the other day because I pretty much said that the government shouldn't be involved in the bedroom because you can do whatever you want in your house. And someone said, well, but you don't own your body, like Christ owns your body. And it's like, well, as a Catholic, I might think that's true, but I still think you have free will with your body, Anyway, I want to go into this because I feel like there's misconceptions about property rights. And they're important, especially in the current era when we have so many socialists and frickin' communists around, because they don't understand property rights at all. They kind of hate property rights and would get rid of them if they could. So property rights really originated with real property. That's really where we kind of got that, created, or that understanding. It's developed through common law, starting mostly with British common law, and then obviously coming to the United States and further developing this idea. But as most of you know, quite frankly, I should preface all of this by saying, until we get rid of the property tax in this country, our property rights are a little tenuous at best in America. Because if you have to pay property tax on your land, do you really own it? Anyway, you'll be able to answer that question even better after I talk about this a little bit. So when you're in law school, you go to property law. One of the first things you learn about is that when you own a piece of property, it comes associated with certain rights. And they'll refer to that as a bundle of sticks. Like that's kind of just property law jargon. And some of the things in this bundle of sticks, I have 6 that I like to focus on, but I'll just go through them briefly. But it's the right to possess, the right to control, the right to enjoy, the right to exclude, the right to convey, and the right to destroy. There's a couple other ones as well, but those are the big 6. And in terms of real property, it's really easy. And that's why I started with real property instead of getting into all of this stuff like you own your body and you own your mind and all of that. Because with real property, it's really easy to understand, right? For example, the right to possess your property. In effect, that means that you own it. You've got the deed, it's yours. Right? You're the one who's on the land. You're the one who gets to walk on it, be on it. You're not a trespasser on your land. You're the one who possesses it, right? It's the same thing with the right to control. In effect, that's saying you get to decide what happens on your land. If you want it to be for gardening, or if you want it to be for just your house, or whatever, you want to put a pool on there, it's up for you to decide. And again, I talk about how property rights are tenuous in this country because these days you'd have to get like a permit to build a pool on your own land, or to even catch rainwater on your own land is like illegal. But so that's the right to control. The right to exclude is the idea that you can kick off trespassers from your property. You get to decide who comes on your property, when, and how long they're there, and you can revoke that as well. You can kick them out later if you want to kick them out. That's the right to exclude. The right to enjoy, it's kind of similar to the right to control, but it's more so that people can't tell you what you can do in terms of having fun on your own property. If you want to play music, if you want to watch TV, if you want to do whatever, it's your property to enjoy. That's the basics of it. The right to convey is really just the right to sell. So that means that if you have a deed for a piece of real property, you can go sell it to somebody. You can say, that's freedom of contract, right? You can say, this is my property. I want to sell it for X hundred thousands of dollars. You make the exchange. You have the right to sell it. Now that other person gets the bundle of sticks that was associated with owning that piece of real property. And the 6th one I mentioned is the right to destroy. And with real property, this one's actually a little weird because destroying the earth, that sounds a little bit strange. But in effect, that means that you could, if you had like a controlled fire on your own property, in theory, that would be sort of okay. I don't recommend that because if it spreads to other land, then you're immediately liable for anything that happens not on your property. But these are just some basics, and I think that I'll just go quickly through personal property as well with those. It's the same thing, like, let's talk about my iPad as the example. So I have the right to possess it. I have the right to have it in my hand, keep it in my house, have it in my purse, take it with me wherever I want. I have the right to control it. I put a password on this. I chose which apps are on here, all of that. I have the right to exclude from it, again, with the password. I get to decide who uses my iPad, when it's used, why it's used, whatever. It's my personal property. I have the right to enjoy it, right? I can watch TV on this. I can read books on this. I can use it forever I want. If my enjoyment of it is even just to, I don't know, frame it and put it up on the wall, that's what I can do with it. I could sell this to someone. I have the right to convey it, right? I could sell this to Edgar if he wanted my old, couple generations ago iPad. And also I have the right to destroy this. If I wanted to throw it up against the wall, bash it with a baseball bat, it's my personal property to destroy. So, and part of the reason too why I wanted to talk about this is I think that this foundation with the bundle of sticks, when applied to the body and mind, like I said earlier, are actually the foundation of all of our rights. And I'll get into more detail about that later because it's a little bit more complicated. But I've been trying to write a book about this that I was going to call the Property Manifesto, and I'm still working on it. But for the time being, I think that YouTube and podcasting is actually the most efficient way to get this out. Because even if I publish a book, how many people are going to read it, right? But I can come on here and I can try to explain some of these ideas to you. So please just keep that in mind. When you own property, you get to, there's a lot of rights that come with it. Like, having property ownership doesn't just mean that you get to, inhabit a certain piece of property. So I don't know. I wanted to start with that. Eventually, I will write the Property Manifesto, but at least for right now, I can give you some basics on that. Did anyone have questions about what I talked about so far?
No, people just added permits, deeds of trust with lenders, underground oil, water,
right,
easements, et cetera, et cetera.
Right, and that is an important aspect of real property as well. Is I forget exactly what the theory is called in property law, but the idea is that when you own a piece of land, you own it in a cylinder, or I guess, I don't know, what would it be if it's a square or whatever. The point is, you own it up to the heavens and down to the center of the earth. So that's where you get mineral rights and all of that. That's kind of in the right to control, the right to enjoy, right? You get to, if you have oil or gold or whatever on your land, you get to mine that out and use it.
Is it labor,
right?
labor theory of property?
What's that?
Labor theory of property? No.
Oh, there's a couple theories about how property comes into being.
Got it.
And that's probably what they're talking about. There's some theories where they say that basically property only exists because someone put their sweat or their labor and sweat into appropriating something for use. And that's actually most of the argument about why, and this is kind of some testy area, but why in effect it's okay sort of that we are here in America and sort of took some of this land from Native Americans, because the idea is that we were the ones who actually put some of this land to use first. And it's actually interesting, rights to water use kind of have this theory as well, because in places like Colorado where water is not abundant, it's not about who got to, it's not about necessarily even if it's on your land, but it's about who appropriated the water for their use first. So that's one theory. It's about whether, if you did some kind of laborious task to achieve property. But you could also just buy property. You could buy it from someone else. And some people want to argue that property rights only exist because of scarcity. And we have to protect property because there's scarcity and things can't be communally owned because of the tragedy of the commons and yada, yada, yada. But I actually don't like that argument for the creation of property rights, because I still think that even if we had infinite everything, like even if we had infinite bananas, let's say, I still think that I should be able to say, but these particular bananas are my bananas. I don't care if there's a billion bananas. Like these 5 are mine, right? So, and like let's say we get space travel going, where all of a sudden there's an abundance of like infinite land to be owned in the universe. Even then, I still don't think that that would void your property rights and the real property that you possess right now. So, but you can imagine how, if you apply these theories to your body and your mind, how you might get some of these other rights. And I'll just tease at it a little bit. Like, if you own your body, doesn't that mean you have the right to possess it and control it and exclude from it and enjoy it? And I mean, it's a little bit different. Like, you can't really sell your body. You can't really convey it because you're permanently attached to it. But even still, like, this is why I'm sort of okay with like prostitution and stuff, because you can kind of sell what you're doing, like what you have there, you know? And it's the same thing with like drugs and all of that. It's like if you want to destroy your body with a bad diet and with drugs or whatever, that's on you, you know? That's your body to destroy. And it's the same thing with your mind, you know? And this is why we get into censorship and dystopias and all that stuff. It's like you have the right to possess your mind. I mean, you can't not, really. But you get to control it. You get to exclude from it, you know? People shouldn't be getting to claim that stuff is thought crime. And again, like with drugs and stuff, if you want to destroy your mind, you can. So that's just a little preview. I want to talk about each of those in more depth in a different podcast, but I just wanted to talk about that.